Hello YouTube, we're going to show you today how to take apart a Kenmore two-stage front load washer. Most of these washing machines are pretty similar, so we're going to start with the basics of the outside. We've disconnected it from the wall, and there are 4 screws that hold the top in place. So we're going to take those off, and this lid will actually slide a 1/4 inch back and then up. And then we're going to remove the black screws that line the outside of the tub. We're also going to remove the front panel with the 2 lower screws, and the whole thing will just come out. And then we're going to show you how to take off the seal. Okay, so here we have it. We've taken off the back panel with all the screws associated, taken off the top. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to pull off the belt. To do that, most of the time you should use a screwdriver. I just use my hands. Pull back the belt and it slides right off. We're going to inspect the belt for any wear. This one's pretty good, so we're going to reuse it. Then we're going to come along to the front and we're going to remove the seal that holds the front in place. Now, most washing machines are built the same, so what you're going to do is you're going to look around the rim until you find a spring. Now, most of the time it's right on the bottom. Sometimes it's not. So here it is in this case. I've already removed this one to make it easy, but there it is. You're going to use a screwdriver or your fingers to pull that pin and the ring right off of the seal and work your way all the way around. Then you're going to pull the seal inwards towards the tub, and as you do, most washing machines will have it at the top. There's a little spigot for where all of the detergent and bleach gets put into the tumbler as you're doing your wash. This one in particular has it in the corner, and there was a little quick connector that I just quickly popped. It's kind of hard to see, but that's where it is. You'll pull the quick connector or the hose clamp or whatever it is that's holding it in, and again, just peeling it back very gently. You want to save that seal. It's still good to be reused, and then pushing that back into the tub. Okay, so the next thing we've done just to kind of speed up the process is there's a connector at the top of the tub which holds the additional, I guess it's either bleach or fabric softener. So we're just going to pull that out, and we're going to again save that because we're going to need it later. I've removed all the top screws that hold the top panel in place, and you'll need to pull those out. The next step is going to be to take out the motor. To do that, we're going to use a nut driver, and then we're just going to undo these bolts that hold the motor in place. We're going to drop the motor. I'm going to leave it on the bottom of the tub so that I can pull out the tub assembly. So here we go. We've removed the motor. It had 3 screws holding it in this particular configuration. So there's 2 here, and there's 1 further back that we had to use an extension drive to get at. And then we just lowered the motor and let it sit on the bottom of the basin so that we can remove the tub. Don't be fooled. This isn't that hard of a job. It's pretty straightforward with some simple tools and a little bit of know-how, and you'll be on your way. Okay, so the next thing we've done is we've removed any connectors that are connected to the tub. In this case, at the bottom, there's the drain. It's just a simple hose clamp. You undo that and pull it away. There will be a little bit of water in there. That's perfectly normal. And then any other quick connectors that connect to the tub. On fancier models, you'll have like a heater or a heating element at the bottom here that you may want to disconnect, or any zip ties that are connected to the frame. And then once you've disconnected anything that really accessorizes the tub, you're going to move on to the shock mounts. So we're going to remove those next. And to remove those, this particular model only has 2. And they're these quick pins that you got to push in and then push out the actual pin to remove the shock struts at the bottom. Some units have 4, and some of them are either this type of design or it's like a 1/4 turn where you actually 1/4 turn the top and it pulls out. So whichever one you've got, you want to pull your shocks out first. Okay, so here we are. I've taken the shock apart to show you how it all comes together. So this shock would normally sit holding between the frame of the washing machine and the tub. And then to keep it in place, this is a cheaper model, so they didn't use very fancy pins. But these pins go inside the actual housing of the shock, and then there's this little quick push part right there that you just press in on and the whole thing slides out. Now you do want to save these for later because when we put the machine back together, we're going to need them. Now, a little jury rigging, if you do lose them or if they break, not a big deal. You can go to a local hardware store and just buy a nylon bolt and a nut will do. It's just a little bit tight of a space to put a nylon bolt and nut. I'd use nylon instead of metal because you'll get a squeaking if you use metal, and then you'll hear the machine every time it vibrates just a little bit. So that's why they use the nylon. Okay, so the only thing left holding the tub in place is these 2 large springs at the top. And most washing machines will either have 2, sometimes 4, but very rarely if they're a higher end model with the noise sensitivity. Now, there's nothing holding the weight of this drum right now, so you may need some help. You're going to lift up the drum as high as you can get it. I'm just going to use a car jack and put it underneath, and be very careful to get it right up, and then remove those springs, and then the whole tub will just kind of float down. We're going to gently place it onto the basin of the actual washing machine. Then we're going to slowly pull it out towards the rear of the machine so we can get the tub assembly out. So I've removed the springs. I've got the tub just sitting gently on the bottom of the unit, and they are quite heavy-duty springs, so you want to make sure that you get some help or put something underneath to raise it up because there's a lot of tension there, and just be very careful not to crush anything underneath. So here we are, we've taken the machine pretty much apart. There's the shell of what was once my Kenmore high-end front-load washing machine, and then there's the tub assembly. Now, the tub assembly is going to split apart down the center, so we're going to take apart all these bolts. The whole thing's going to come apart. There'll be a gasket seal in the middle. We've got to take off the back pulley, so we're going to do that step by step. Be warned, this thing is heavy. It's got that concrete block on the end to reduce vibration. Some units have bigger blocks, some have smaller. Some of the drums aren't necessarily made of plastic, especially older machines. So again, this is really heavy. And the other thing you want to be careful of is when you're removing it, this is a sealed unit, so this is what's going to hold in all the water when you're doing your wash. If you're not careful and you crack it or you break it at the bottom, it's going to leak, and there's no way to fix that other than exchanging the whole thing. So the next step is to remove the pulley, and I'm a big fan of brute force and ignorance, so the easiest way to do this is just to shove a screwdriver inside one of these bezels so the actual pulley stops spinning. And then you're going to take your socket wrench, and they're all a little bit different sizing. So you may find yours is a little bit bigger, a little bit less. And I'm just going to undo that bolt, and eventually it'll go. And when it does, the whole thing is just going to slide out with a bit of wiggling. So it's going to move back towards me or towards the camera. And then from there, we'll have access to the bearing. So my particular washing machine decided it did not want to come out, which is fairly common. So what I've been doing is, again, brute force and ignorance. I've been shoving a screwdriver in behind the bearing, trying not to damage the bearing, and then yanking back, using a rubber mallet as well, just to tap around the edges, just to loosen it up. You don't want to be pounding too hard, because again, that is that bearing, and it's not meant to take that kind of abuse. But eventually, with some wiggling, it comes off. So this particular model of tub, being the lower end, cheaper version of the washing machine, it just uses a bunch of screws all along the perimeter of the two halves of the drum. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a socket wrench and we're just going to undo all of these. Now be aware there's a gasket in between that we're going to want to save. I'm personally too cheap to buy another gasket, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to silicone it when I put them back together, the two halves, and that should hold out all the water as long as the old gasket is still in good contact and good shape. There is a big concrete weight on the front as well, so you're going to want to be careful when you're lifting it up. It's got a lot of weight, but it's going to separate us between the interior drum and the exterior shell of the drum, and we're just going to split those in half. So here we go. We've removed the front half of the machine, and we're just about to pull out the tub assembly from the bearing. There's a cotter pin in there that we're going to have to pull with either a pick or you're supposed to use cotter pliers, but I don't have a pair of those, so I'm just going to use a pick and whatever I can to get the bearing out. Now, as suspected, these drums are very poorly designed, and there's 3 vanes that hold the drum in place from the back, and one of them is broken in this case. And you can tell because when you move the machine around through the 3 different points, you hear that squeaking and that movement. That's because one of the arms is broken. What they've done is they've used stainless steel drum with aluminum spider arms, and stainless and aluminum, they don't mix very well. Normally, you don't get corrosion with stainless and aluminum. You need an electrolyte. It just so happens that water with detergent, or water in general, acts as the electrolyte, eats away at the back of the drum, which we'll show you in a moment. And so that's the next step here, is we're going to lay this thing flat on its belly, right there. We're going to pull out that pin, and then the whole thing is just going to slide up, leaving the drum behind. So here it is, the inside of the inner half of that tub. And here is the spider assembly and the drum. And exactly as I predicted, the spider assembly has broken on one of the arms right there. You can see the crack has come straight through. There's nothing holding that half of the drum on, and that's what makes for that awful vibration, terrible noise. It sounds like machine gun fire. Now, the other thing you want to look for inside is if you don't catch it early enough, when the drum hits the outside of the wall, it'll make this scratch or indentation on the wall. That's the screws on the outside of the tub. I am very lucky today because, as you can see, it really hasn't dug much of a groove. I have heard of these screws going all the way through the outer casing, and then it's no longer waterproof, and now you need an outer casing as well. So there it is for your information. Now to put it all back together, everything in reverse. So you're going to start with the tub. It's going to go inside this half. The other half's going to go on top. The whole thing's got to slide, or put your bolts all the way around. Whole thing's got to slide back into the machine, hang up on the springs, put in your shocks, and then from there, put back all the connectors and hoses, and then the front seal, and you'll be set to go. Do not be fooled. It is not that hard of a job. This particular bearing didn't even have a ring snap. It just pounded out with a mallet. Very straightforward, very easy to do. I've done it with a box of hand tools, maybe a screwdriver and pliers, as well as a hammer. So you can do it too. Good luck out there. Put your comments below.